They say betrayal hits hardest when it comes from the ones who made you believe you were safe. I walked into that boardroom wearing a navy suit my mother used to call the armor of the ambitious. I carried my presentation like a shield, armed with charts, projections, and a plan to modernize Roscorp's stagnant divisions. My pulse was steady. My purpose was clear. Mid-sentence, he cut me off. "Get out of my company!" Richard Ross Sr.'s voice cracked across the long mahogany table like a whip. Every eye in the room turned toward me. I froze, lips still parted from the sentence I never got to finish. "You heard me. Get out." My father didn't blink. His face was stone. Cold. Almost pleased. In his hand, a document. A waiver. Pre-printed. Dated. My name already typed in. It said I would forfeit all my shares, my position, my title, my legacy. Caleb, my brother, shifted in his seat but said nothing. My mother stared down at her hands, her fingers tightening around the edge of her Hermes clutch like it might fly away. I didn't cry. I signed. Then I looked my father dead in the eye and whispered, "Thank you for making this clear." I stood and walked out. No one stopped me. 2 hours later, the video hit the internet. Someone leaked the footage. The failure heiress publicly disowned. Headlines, hashtags, humiliation. They used slow motion. They zoomed in on my face. Some said I looked stunned. Others said smug. One blog said I looked like I expected it. They were wrong. I had no idea. I closed every tab, turned off the phone, and walked barefoot across my apartment's hardwood floors like I could leave that moment behind with every step. The silence rang louder than his voice had. I needed Daniel. He had been my anchor through late nights and lonely meetings. My safe place. My plan was to bury myself in his arms, maybe cry just this once, let the world fade for a minute. Instead, I found the truth. His laptop was open. Stupid move. The emails were there, unread, unsent, unsanitized. One name stood out, Thomas Reed. The man who'd handled our family's money since I was a child. I clicked. And Reed. Daniel was his son. My boyfriend. My partner. The man who had said he loved me. Had been planted. Paid to stay close. Planted to steer me, spy on me, keep me distracted while they stripped me bare. One email, she's emotionally isolated. Prime moment to introduce the waiver next week. Another, leak the New York brunch photo. She's smiling in it. Won't look like a victim. My throat closed. Then the door opened. Daniel walked in. Saw the screen. Didn't flinch. "You weren't supposed to find that yet," he said. Calm. Like it was logistics. Like I was late for a meeting. Why? I asked. But I knew. I just needed to hear it. Needed to break. My dad said I'd get my own fund to manage. You? You were just a stepping stone. I slapped him. Hard. I don't remember deciding to. My hand just moved. He didn't move. Didn't apologize. I collapsed after he left, hands over my face, but I didn't sob. I didn't scream. Something inside just changed. Hardened. I heard my own voice say, "Never again." The betrayal had layers. And it wasn't over. I logged into my business email. Error. Tried again. Then my bank account. 2 transactions reversed. Something was off. I called Lauren Pierce, the only person I trusted who understood both tech and betrayal. She ran a scan. 20 minutes later, she called back. You're being tracked. What do you mean? Your laptop has spyware. It was installed via your mother's Wi-Fi network last month. Remote surveillance protocol. I didn't speak. She continued. There's a digital consent form. With your mother's e-signature. Says it's out of emotional concern. Concern. What a gentle word for control. Every email, every client proposal, every draft of my strategy, they had seen it all. Monitored. Stored. Reviewed. My own mother. I called her. She picked up. I said, you didn't even trust my silence? She hung up. I sat in the dark. And I wrote. If they thought they buried me, they forgot I'm a seed. I didn't sleep that night. I read old notes. Checked contracts. Looked for loopholes. I pulled out a letter my grandmother had sent me when I turned 21. Her handwriting was always straight, proud, legible. Never beg for a seat at their table. Build your own. Even if it starts with a stool in the basement. By dawn, I booked a one-way train to a place where nobody knew my name. I packed only essentials, laptop, notebook, 3 outfits, and a photograph of Helena Voss smiling in front of her flower shop. Before leaving, I opened my notebook. I am not their failure. I am their reckoning. Outside, the snow began to fall. And inside me, something finally stopped shivering. 3 weeks later, I stood alone at a bus terminal, 6 weeks pregnant, and nowhere to go. 3 weeks after I vanished from the boardroom, I stood under flickering streetlights outside a shelter that smelled like bleach and old grief. My coat didn't fit anymore, probably shrunk from the nights I'd curled up in it like armor. The woman at the front desk barely asked questions. Just handed me a folded towel and a cot assignment like it was routine to watch someone fall apart. I hadn't eaten since the bus ride. My head spun when I sat down on the thin mattress. I tried to sleep, but the ceiling dripped and someone was crying softly 2 bunks over. The next morning, I fainted in the hallway. They called a volunteer nurse. She looked at me, then gently said, "You should get checked. There's a clinic 3 blocks from here. Just give my name." At the clinic, the tests were routine: blood work, blood pressure, urine. I waited alone in a plastic chair while the TV in the corner played muted morning news. Then came the news I hadn't expected. "You're pregnant," the nurse said. "About 7 weeks." My breath caught. I thought about that night, weeks ago, when I had still trusted Daniel, still believed I had something real. That last moment, so meaningless to him, was now a heartbeat inside me. The nurse listed options. I nodded but didn't hear. I left before she finished. Outside, I sat on the curb. Cars passed. No one looked. I held my stomach, barely there beneath layers of winter, and thought, I lost everything. But this one heartbeat might be mine. A week passed. I swept floors at a diner for tips. Ate toast and drank hot water with lemon to stay awake. And then he came. Daniel stood in the shelter's parking lot like he belonged there. He wore a designer coat, leather gloves, and an expression like pity was a favor. "I found you," he said, like that was romantic. He handed me an envelope. I didn't take it. 250 grand, he said. And a clean legal exit. You sign. You terminate. You disappear. No headlines. No freak show. Everyone wins. I took the envelope. Tore it in two. Let the pieces fall like ash. His face tightened. You really want to raise a freak alone? I didn't blink. Better alone than with a fraud. His eyes darkened. They'll bury you. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I'm already 6 feet deep. The only way left is up. He left with his boots crunching ice behind him. I didn't watch. The next clinic visit was colder. The doctor wasn't unkind, but her voice lacked warmth. There's a high chance of a chromosomal condition, she said. You may want a second opinion. I got one. Same result. The social worker from the clinic pulled me aside later. Your family has called 3 times. They asked for your medical status. I felt the air leave my lungs. How? They knew what tests to ask about, she said gently. Sometimes family thinks they know what's best. Margaret. She'd hacked into my body now. That night, I packed again. I told no one. Took a midnight train to another city. A new name, a new street, a new chance to disappear. But before I left, I named her Maya. In Sanskrit, it means illusion. But it also means power. I would make her both. At the new place, I found a studio with peeling walls and a view of an alley. I had $600 saved from cleaning hostels and writing ad copy under a fake email. I opened a new savings account. Blocked every family contact. Started watching business law lectures in the public library between shifts. I taped a post-it above the cracked mirror, no one owns me. No one owns her. At night, I'd press my palm against my belly and whisper, I will build a world for you. No matter what it costs. She wasn't even born yet, but she already gave me a reason to become someone new. And so, with a belly barely showing and a name only I knew, I started building something with hands that had never held anything real. People think ownership is about papers, titles, or inheritance. But sometimes, ownership begins with a woman saying no more. I cleared the cluttered corner of my one-room apartment and placed the shelter's borrowed laptop on a folding chair stacked with phone books. Its fan wheezed like it had asthma, but it turned on. That was enough. I stitched tiny mittens from recycled sweaters I found at a thrift store's dollar rack. I repurposed old packaging, flattened cereal boxes, brown paper bags, string from bakery boxes. My hands worked while Maya kicked gently inside me. I told her, we're making something real. At the library, I learned how to take product photos using natural light and a white bedsheet taped to the wall. I watched webinars on copywriting. I wrote my first product description at 2 a.m., barefoot, belly round, heart louder than fear. I named the brand after her, Maya Made. The logo was hand-drawn on a napkin, scanned through a library printer, and uploaded with shaking fingers. When my first sale came, hand-knit booties to a woman in Kansas, she messaged me, I can feel the love in the stitches. I cried. Not because of the $18.95, but because someone, somewhere, saw my work and called it love. At a local startup program for women of color and single mothers, I met Zoe. She had perfect teeth and spoke in marketing acronyms like a second language. She complimented my organic branding and offered to optimize my shop backend while I attended a weekend workshop. I trusted her. Gave her my login. She smiled like it meant nothing. When I returned Sunday night, everything was gone. The shop was locked. My images, descriptions, even the hand-stitched logo were now pasted across a new site, ZNZ Kidswear. I emailed. Called. Nothing. The program said it was a personal dispute, not within their scope. I sat in the dark. Maya kicked. I whispered, "I'm sorry." But I didn't stay sorry. You don't steal fire from a mother, I told the wall. You only make her forge new steel. I rebuilt from scratch. New name, Maya and Me. New platform, new branding. I emailed every past buyer personally, offering a 10% discount for coming back. Weeks later, an email came in. Clarissa. She had ordered a onesie in February. Said her boutique chain was expanding and she loved my voice. There's something honest about your work, she wrote. Let's talk wholesale. When she arrived, she looked around my apartment, thread scraps on the floor, an ironing board as a table, post-its stuck to the wall with sketches. She smiled. You're doing what they never could, she said. You're building with soul. She placed an order for 300 units. I cried again. Not from despair this time, but from the knowledge that something was turning. I used my last $300 to register the business legally. Opened a P.O. box. Created a new business email. Ordered cards that said, Maya and Me, handcrafted with resilience. On Craigslist, I found a woman selling an old embroidery machine for $120. I took the bus to pick it up and hauled it up 3 flights of stairs alone. My neighbors, 2 moms and a retired tailor, offered to help part-time. I paid them hourly. No favors. Dignity is a currency too. By month's end, the wall above my desk was covered. Design drafts. Order confirmations. A printed-out testimonial that read, "Your work made me feel less alone as a mother." In the middle of it all, one grainy black-and-white photo, Maya's first ultrasound. A swirl of promise and rebellion. I wasn't coming back for revenge. I was coming back because now, for the first time, I had something worth defending. People said time heals, but it wasn't time that healed me, it was proof. 14 months after I'd stitched my first onesie in that cracked wall apartment, I stood in the marble lobby of Ross Corp again. Same building. Different woman. I wore a navy suit cut sharper than the one I'd left in, hair pulled back, heels steady. Under my coat, a tiny pink sleeve peeked from the crook of my arm. Maya slept against my chest, her breathing even. I could feel her heartbeat through the fabric, a rhythm steadier than my own. The receptionist didn't recognize me until I said my name. I'm here for the shareholder session. She froze, then pointed me toward the boardroom upstairs. Through the glass walls, I saw my father, Richard Ross Sr., standing at the head of the table, voice booming about quarterly profits. Caleb sat beside him, nodding dutifully. It almost looked normal, until I remembered what they'd done to me. I sat quietly among the guests, listening. He didn't glance my way once. The moment he ended the presentation, I rose. May I address the board? The room fell silent. Richard looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost. Caleb whispered, Dad. I smiled. You think I vanished. You think I lost. You've never seen me prepare. Lauren Pierce entered from the back, briefcase in hand. She slid a tablet across the table to the chairman. The documents were live filings, dated, stamped, and verified. Richard's voice broke. What is this? Proof, I said softly. Because this company doesn't own me anymore. Lauren connected the tablet to the projector. On screen appeared a series of scanned pages, stock transfers, meeting notes, emails. Then came the recordings. Richard's own voice echoed through the room, "If we can shift those assets quietly, she'll never know until it's signed." Thomas Reed's reply followed, "Caleb can take the proxy, keep her out of the voting chain." The faces around the table stiffened. Caleb's hand trembled as he reached for his glass, spilling water across his notes. Lauren turned toward the board. "Ladies and gentlemen, these aren't allegations. They're assignments of shares." Then came the kicker, a recorded call with Diana Quinn confirming the sale of her 8% stake, to me. The transaction time-stamped, notarized, legal. I took a deep breath. 15 months ago, you called me unfit to lead. I built something from nothing. And in the process, I earned the loyalty, and the stock, you all thought I'd lost. Richard slumped in his chair, his color draining. Someone in the back muttered, "She really did it." I leaned forward. "If you ever wondered who rebuilt this company's brand after your scandals, it was me. And tomorrow, you meet your new CEO." The air cracked open. My father stood, trying to recover command. "This is still my company." Thomas Reed's face flickered onto the screen via video conference. "Actually, Richard, as interim CFO, I have to declare these transactions invalid. They originated from unethical sources." Lauren didn't flinch. She tapped her tablet, playing another audio file, Thomas's voice again, smug, unmistakable, "We'll bury the numbers in her account until the audit ends." The silence afterward was so deep I could hear the hum of the projector. Grant Lasker, seated quietly in the corner, began to clap. Slow. Deliberate. "She isn't your enemy," he said. "She's the inevitability you refuse to see." My father glared, veins visible on his temple. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Inside, I could feel the old tremor, fear, grief, rage, all sharpening into steel. "You taught me how to play your game," I thought. "But you never taught me how to change it." I turned to the chairman. "The vote ends in 1 hour," I said. "And I've already placed mine." When the votes came in, it wasn't even close. 10 in favor. 1 abstained, Caleb. The gavel came down softly. The same sound that had once exiled me now crowned me. Ross Corp announces Evelyn Ross as majority shareholder and chief executive officer, effective immediately. The press release went live within the hour. Outside, news trucks flooded the street, lenses glinting like judgment. I stepped through the revolving doors, Maya balanced on my hip. Her small voice said, "Mommy, you win." I kissed her forehead. No pity, sweetheart. No pity parties. Just proof. Behind the glass, I caught a glimpse of my father standing alone in his office, the same place he'd once thrown me out of. Caleb stood beside him, saying nothing. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't wave. Just watched as the elevator doors closed. I looked straight ahead. I left as their secret. I returned as their headline. The envelope came on a Monday morning. No courier, no return address. Just my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen since the days when I still believed in good intentions, Daniels. Inside, they gave me a choice. I chose wrong. The letter smelled faintly of hospital antiseptic and regret. He wrote that the cancer had spread, that he had 6 months if Mercy runs late. He didn't ask for reconciliation, only forgiveness. "You were always the heir," he wrote. "Just not theirs." For a moment I considered throwing it away. But something in his last line, "Read this when you find your truth," made me pause. That night, I called his neighbor and asked if I could visit. The apartment was dark, oxygen machine humming. Daniel was thin, almost translucent, the sharp edges of guilt etched into his face. He looked up and smiled weakly. "You came." "I did." He reached for my hand but stopped halfway. "You were right about them. About me. I didn't speak. I just listened." "You don't have to forgive me," he whispered. "I'm not doing it for you," I said. "Forgiveness doesn't erase your debt. It erases mine." He nodded, eyes closing. When I left, I didn't look back. The air outside felt heavier, but my chest felt lighter. Have you ever received an apology you weren't ready to give? Days later, the hospital called. Not for Daniel, but for my father. Richard Ross Sr. had suffered a stroke. Caleb was already there, managing the doctors, demanding private rooms. When I entered, the beeping monitors filled the silence where his authority used to live. His right hand trembled as he tried to reach for a pen. He mumbled words like company shares empty seat. For a moment, I saw not the man who threw me out, but the builder who chained himself to his empire. My mother appeared quietly at the door. Her hair was silver now, her face tired. "We were proud of you," she said softly. "We just never understood you." In the corner, a nurse mentioned a voicemail found in his personal device, a call from Helena Voss's estate. My grandmother's voice, faint but clear, confirming that the share transfer was legitimate. Proof that I had earned what he always said I'd stolen. I looked at my father, once a fortress, now a fragile frame behind glass. He built walls around me, I thought. Now he lies behind one. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't them, it's the self who waited. Then came the headlines. Ross Corp CEO under investigation. Caleb Ross alleges illicit transfer. I watched my brother's interview from my office. He said the words carefully, coached by Thomas Reed, "It's about integrity. Family deserves transparency." I scheduled a press conference. When I walked onto the stage, Maya's small hand wrapped around mine, cameras flashing like lightning. "Succession," I began, "isn't about being born, it's about being built." Questions flew like arrows. Did your father approve the takeover? Are you covering past misconduct? I smiled. Yes, my father asked me to leave. Today I asked him to talk. Behind the curtain, my phone buzzed. A recording from our internal security feed, Thomas Reed whispering to Caleb, "We've lost the board. Move to Plan B." So that's what this was now, a war of image, not numbers. When the world rebrands you, do you fight it or rewrite the label? Weeks later, my father passed. The funeral was private, invitation only. I arrived alone, wearing black that didn't feel like mourning. The chapel smelled of cedar and old hymns. I placed a single white rose on his casket and said nothing. Silence was the only eulogy he'd ever listened to. As I turned to leave, Caleb grabbed my wrist. "Stay. For family." "My family stayed," I said, pulling free. "I'm going." Outside, the press helicopters buzzed overhead. I didn't flinch this time. I drove away down the gravel path while the mansion shrank in my rearview mirror. I called Grant Lasker as the sun set. "It's done," I said. "The legacy is mine now, or broken by me." He paused, then said, "Either way, Evelyn, it's finally yours. You don't need to shout your closure. Sometimes walking away is the loudest truth." That night, back in my home office, I pinned 3 things to my corkboard: Daniel's letter, the hospital report, and the press release naming me CEO. Beneath them, I typed a new mission statement: empower the undervalued. Build from loss. A former Roscorp analyst emailed me, offering inside leads for a new venture. I smiled. The circle was closing, but on my terms now. Maya toddled in, tugging at my sleeve. "Mommy, are you still working?" I lifted her onto my lap. "No, baby. I'm building." She giggled, tracing her finger along the word Maya printed on my company's letterhead. "You were never a project," I whispered. "You're the purpose." Have you ever turned your pain into your blueprint? The sunlight dimmed against the office window. I closed my laptop. On the screen, a notification blinked in red: incoming call, Board of Roscorp. I smiled. They weren't done. But this time, I held all the cards. The loft smelled of oil and ambition. I stood in the center of the open-plan space, sunlight bouncing off the steel beams and the pale blue walls we had painted nights ago. My daughter Maya tottered around a low table, clutching scraps of fabric and giggling. Walter, the retired tailor I'd hired part-time, showed her how to thread a needle. "Little boss in training," he said. Maya grinned. This was our headquarters, Maya and me. What began 6 months ago as a pillow fort of thrift store furniture now housed machines, sketches, orders. I held the official incorporation certificate in one hand and a steaming mug of coffee in the other. I looked up and whispered, "This is proof." We opened the day at 9 a.m. sharp, as I insisted, not as a fashion statement, but as a rule: success respects discipline. The women sewing in the back nodded as I walked past. I greeted them by name. These were the single mothers I pulled out of temp jobs and night shifts. They brought children on Thursdays when school lets out. We paid like adults. We trusted like leaders. Starting today, I told them, we are not just making onesies for babies, we are making worth for mothers. The words landed soft, then set a foundation. Because the uncomfortable truth is, value isn't assigned. It's constructed. I opened my laptop and checked the dashboard: online revenue up 38% quarter-over-quarter, first wholesale client in 5 states this quarter, talks brewing in Canada. I smiled. Numbers didn't heal pain, but they made promise visible. At 2 p.m., I got a call from the scholarship board. Maya had won her full-ride scholarship, based on her artwork and perseverance. My heart tightened. I remembered the bus ride. The studio apartment. The quiet vow. And now, her future opened. I held her in the hallway while the board rep spoke. "This is for you both," I said. "You're not a project, baby. You're the purpose." Then, later, the final vestige of my old life rang in. The board of Roscorp sent the offer: would you join as advisor? The invitation arrived on a polished card. The implication was clear: come back on their terms. I walked into the conference room they provided, which reeked of old leather and regret. I looked around and said, "Thank you for the offer, but I don't need a seat. I need a table of my own." And I walked out, Maya's small hand in mine. The next day, Grant Lasker stood on stage introducing me. She walked away from power and came back to rebuild it on her terms. The audience rose. I considered the standing ovation as soft armor. That night, when the city lights reflected in the office window, I closed my laptop with a final click. Maya yawned beside me and asked, "Mommy, are you done working?" I held her close. "No, sweetheart. I'm building." A notification popped up: incoming call, Board of Roscorp. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Yes, they weren't done. But this time, I held all the cards.